works in the future, works that you may not see. That we have to examine expertly, Prabhupada replied. He accepted the principle that future works could be translated from Sanskrit, but he cautioned, "But amongst my disciples, I don't think there are many who can translate properly." Srila Prabhupada went on to describe the special qualifications for translating Sanskrit Vaishnava literature. It would take a realized soul, he said, otherwise simply by imitating ABCD it will not help. My purports are liked by people because it is presented as practical experience. It cannot be done unless one is realized. Srila Prabhupada had already given the outline for his will to Tamal Krishna Goswami. The GBC would be the ultimate governing authority in ISKCON. 3 trustees would be assigned to each ISKCON property. The GBC was to make a thorough draft and make the will legal. For Srila Prabhupada, a will meant protection for his ISKCON. As Srila Prabhupada had explained, the devotee had not a tinge of self-interest. Everything is for Krishna. But in his purity, he must not be naive. ISKCON was a large growing organization of properties and monies intended 100% for use in the devotional service of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada called on the GBC to be vigilant. At times like this, it is especially clear that the day was approaching when Prabhupada's children would have to grow up and lead, manage, protect, and expand his society on their own. These might well be their last chances to learn directly from him and to be close with him for chanting the holy name and dedicating themselves utterly to carrying out his desires for ISKCON. A few days later, the final version of Declaration of Will was notarized in the presence of a lawyer. The GBC men, each of whom had pressing leadership and administrative duties within their respective zones, began to feel the need to return to their posts. When some of them expressed their plans to return to their areas of work, Prabhupada gave his permission. They had been together for a week, and now, one by one, they began to disperse. Within another week, most of them had left Vrindavan. Srila Prabhupada and his small staff remained, and the constant chanting continued, performed by the devotees of the Krishna Balaram temple. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 19. Have we finished Canto 6? Okay. Yeah, it's here. I was just wondering why it was here. He did send me the best, I didn't see it. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, and the marker is not on the page. What verse is it? 8. The text, chapter 1, the Supreme Lord is equal to everyone, text 8. Jaya Kale. Is it up there on the board? Tu Sadvasya. Jaya Kale tu Sadvasya. Devarshin Rajaso Asuran. Devarshin Rajaso Suran. Tamaso Yaksha Rakshamsi. Tamaso Yaksha Rakshamsi. Tat Kalanuguno Abhajat. Tat Kalanuguno Bhajat. Jaya Kali tu Satvasya. Devarshin Rajaso Suran. Tamaso Yaksharakshamsi. Tatkala Nuguno Bhayat. Jaya Kali tu Satvasya. Devarshin Rajaso Suran. Tamaso Yaksharakshamsi. Tatkala Nuguno Bhajat. Jaya Kali tu Satvasya. Devarshin Rajaso Suran Tamaso Yaksharakshamsi Tatkala Nuguno Bhajat. Jaya Kali, in the time of prominence, two, indeed, Sadvasya, of goodness, Deva, the demigods, Rishin, and the sages, Rajasa, of passion, Asuran, the demons, Tamasa, of ignorance, Yaksharakshamsi, the Yakshas and Rakshasas, Tatkala Anuguna, according to the particular time, Abhajat, fostered. Translation: when the quality of goodness is prominent, the sages and demigods flourish with the help of that quality, with which they are infused and surcharged by the Supreme Lord. Similarly, when the mode of passion is prominent, the demons flourish, and when ignorance is prominent, the yakshas and rakshasas flourish. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is present in everyone's heart, fostering the reactions of Sattvagun, Rajagun, and Tamagun. Please repeat. When the quality of goodness is prominent, the sages and demigods flourish with the help of that quality, with which they are infused and surcharged by the Supreme Lord. Similarly, when the mode of passion is prominent, the demons flourish, and when ignorance is prominent, the yakshas and rakshasas flourish. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is present in everyone's heart, fostering the reactions of Sattvagun, Rajagun, and Tamagun. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is not partial to anyone. The conditioned soul is under the influence of the various modes of material nature, and behind material nature is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But one's victory and loss under the influence of Sattvagun, Rajagun, and Tamagun are reactions of these modes, not of the Supreme Lord's partiality. Srila Jiva Goswami in the Bhagavad Sandarbha has clearly said, Satvadayo na sanktishe yatra cha prakrita guna na shuddha sarvasudebhya puman adya prasidatu ladini sandini samvit tva eka sarvasam stito lada tapakari mishra tvaino guna varjite. According to this statement of the Bhagavad Sandarbha, the Supreme Lord, being always transcendental to the material qualities, is never affected by the influence of these qualities. This same characteristic is also present in the living being, but because he is conditioned by material nature, even the pleasure potency of the Lord is manifested in the conditioned state as troublesome. In the material world, the pleasure enjoyed by the conditioned soul is followed by many painful conditions. For instance, we have seen that in the two great wars which were conducted by the Rajagun and Tamagun, both parties were actually ruined. The German people declared war against the English to ruin them, but the result was that both parties were ruined. Although the Allies were apparently victorious, at least on paper, actually neither of them were victorious. Therefore, it should be concluded that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not partial to anyone. Everyone works under the influence of various modes of material nature, and when the various modes are prominent, the demigods or demons appear victorious under the influence of these modes. Everyone enjoys the fruits of his qualitative activities. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14:11-13. Sarvadvari Shudehesman Prakasha Upajayate Gyanam Yada Tada Vidyad Vivridam Sadvam Ityuta Lobrapravritya Ramba Karmanam Sama Spriha Rajasyetani Jayante Vivride Bharatarshaba Aprakasho Pravritischa Pramado Moha Evacha Tamashetani Jayante Vivride Kurunandana. Manifestations of the modes of goodness can be experienced when all the gates of the body are illumined by knowledge. O chief of the Bharats, when there is an increase in the mode of passion, the symptoms of great attachment, uncontrollable desire, hankering, and intense endeavour develop. O son of Kuru, when there is an increase in the mode of ignorance, madness, illusion, inertia, and darkness are manifested. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is present in everyone's heart, simply gives the results of the increase in the various qualities, but he is impartial. He supervises victory and loss, but he does not take part in them. The various modes of material nature do not work all at once. The interaction of these modes are exactly like seasonal changes. Sometimes there's an increment of Rajagun, sometimes of Tamagun, and sometimes of Sattvagun. Generally, the demigods are surcharged with Sattvagun, and therefore, when the demons and the demigods fight, the demigods are victorious because of the prominence of their Sattvagun qualities. However, this is not the partiality of the Supreme Lord. Om Agantamarandasya Gananjana Slakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Makam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Lagate Garam Yatkripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinitarnam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu-Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. When the quality of goodness is prominent, the sages and demigods flourish with the help of that quality with which they are infused and surcharged by the Supreme Lord. Similarly, when the mode of passion is prominent, the demons flourish, and when ignorance is prominent, the yakshas and the rakshasas flourish. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is present in everyone's heart, fostering the actions of Sattvagun, Rajagun, and Tamagun. So one takes birth according to what they cultivate in this life. We take birth amongst either the demigods, the demons, the human beings, animals, etc., whatever we cultivate in this life. And then when we take birth in that situation, we're associating more with living entities in that mode. And each of these modes is binding. The mode of goodness, what is the negative effect of the mode of goodness? What is the negative effect of the mode of goodness? Mm-hmm. Exactly, yeah. Conditioned by a sense of material well-being, knowledge, happiness, material happiness, and we think, oh, it's not so bad here, which might be okay for a while until the demons say, we want a bit of your cake and we're going to fight you for it. And this happens from time to time, so there's always that possibility that as soon as you have something then someone wants to take it off you. And the material world is set up like that because it contains so many living entities which are envious of the Supreme Lord. Now, just because someone is a demigod doesn't mean to say that they're pure-hearted, because they're still trying to enjoy separately from Krishna. They may have performed great austerities in a previous life, perhaps austerities which we couldn't do, but what's their motivation? The motivation is to enjoy separately from Krishna. And maybe not separately from Krishna in a sense that there's no sense of God at all, like the Naradamas. They say that the Naradamas, of the 4 types of people who don't surrender to Krishna, one is called the Naradama, not to be confused with Narad, the supermost human being, but Narad, which is the lowest among mankind, because they have all material facilities. They may have great cities, social systems, medical systems, etc., but they have no interest in worshipping the cause of all causes, the Supreme Lord. So they want to enjoy the kingdom of God without God. So the demigods are generally considered to be theists. They accept God, they accept Vishnu as the Supreme, etc. But still they have a desire to enjoy. Even Prabhupada said that many of his disciples would simply be happy to go to the heavenly planets. And that's the underlying problem, is we have a desire to enjoy separately from Krishna. We want to enjoy whether Krishna is included or not. But a devotee, they try to free themselves from the conditioning by the process of sadhana bhakti, where they put the emphasis on trying to please Krishna, whether their happiness is there or not. Because our happiness is, just as a devotee's sadness, devotees are generally considered to be blissful if they're performing devotional service properly and they're in good consciousness, then devotional service is joyfully performed. But their happiness, their misery is paradukha dukhi, to see the suffering of others, suffering that is the suffering the devotees experience. And similarly, their happiness is to see the Supreme Lord or to see the spiritual master or their authorities that are pleased. If we're simply trying to please ourselves all the time, then we're still in the material world. We're still in material consciousness. And although externally we may be doing things, but internally devotional service is a change of heart. It's not simply that we mechanically do something and it just magically becomes pure devotional service. It has to become it's a willing process, which means we have to willfully endeavour to please the Supreme Lord. Otherwise we become conditioned by one of these modes. And even we think, well, okay, being in the heavenly planets would be better than being here anyway. So I'm not too worried about that. It'll be a long time before I have to consider having to deal with the earthly plane again. But when it's over, then it was almost like a flash. Just like at the time of this life ending, we think when we're young, time, the perception of time is that it's practically, you look at your parents or your grandparents and you think, I'll practically never get to that age. It's just inconceivable that I could ever get that old. It's a long, long time away. But when you gradually start getting closer to that, you realise that actually the time was passing a lot quicker than I thought. And the time is actually passing at the same rate, but our perception of it changes, just like you have an hourglass. And the aperture where the sand is going through is a constant, and only so many grains can fall through, and the force of gravity is pulling so many grains through at a time. And when it starts off, it seems like it's going to take for ages, because of the shape of it. Nothing much seems to be happening. But as it gets closer, then it starts going down very quick. So this is perception of time, of this human form of life. As we get older, we realise that we don't have that much time left. It is. I can't stop the wheels of time. The world's not going to stop and wait for me. It's going to carry on. And the time of our anti-Narayana Smriti, having to remember the Lord at the time of death, will be coming soon. And we have to question ourselves, am I doing enough? so that I will take shelter in Krishna at the time of death. Otherwise, we may find ourselves taking shelter of something else in the lower modes, or we may find ourselves bewildered, caught by surprise. So because the sattva gun is generally the mode of the demigods, then it's considered that they're generally victorious. And because when things even get beyond their ability, even though they're in a higher mode, which means that their way of thinking is higher, etc., they have access to the Supreme Lord. Generally, they'll approach Lord Brahma if things get too difficult, and Lord Brahma will go and petition on their behalf to the Supreme Lord to appear that things are becoming too difficult for the demigods to maintain. And this is this can be considered also one of the types of persons who approaches Krishna is when they're in distress. There's 4 types of people that approach Krishna, and one is when they're in distress. So sometimes we don't approach Krishna until we're in distress. We may chant, we may read, etc. But taking shelter in the Lord, we often wait until we're in a difficult position before we really try to take shelter. And that's natural. In our conditioned state. But I remember one time I was dealing with something and I tried everything I could think of. Things seemed to work for a while and then it didn't, and then some things didn't work. Some things seemed to make the matters worse. Some things appeared to make it good for a little while. Then finally I prayed to the deities and the next day it was solved, and I was thinking, why did I not do that earlier? Why did I wait to the last minute? Of course, it's not that we just pray to the Lord and we don't do anything and we just wait, okay, well, I'm not going to do it until I get a sign. You know, if those clouds come up in the big yes formation, then okay, I'll do this thing. You know, that means that we're treating Krishna like our servant. So, of course, we have to act as if everything depends on us, but know that everything depends on Krishna. So we do our best. We endeavour to try to serve with all the gifts that Krishna has given us. We have a material body, we have human body, we have some intelligence, we have good association, we have the Shastra, etc. So we try to use all the resources we have, and we pray to Krishna. And be patient and wait to see what result Krishna wants. Because we may be praying to Krishna for something specific, but Krishna may not want that, what we want. He may want something else to come. And then we have to be open to surrendering to that if that's what Krishna wants. So birds of a feather flock together, that is one saying, and this goes for the living entity. They will flock at the time of death, and then again, going into birth, then they will flock. The material modes of nature will direct them to flock towards the modes which they are attracted to, which they're conditioned by, which they're partial to. Now these few verses have been mentioning about how the Lord is impartial. Sometimes it seems that he's partial. So, for example, the term Bhakta Vatsala, he protects his devotees. Does that not make him sound like he's partial? He doesn't protect the demons. What if the devotee's beaten the demon? Why doesn't he protect the demon? Anybody? Yeah, exactly. So if someone wants to be a demon, that means they're stating, this is the relationship I have with you now, Krishna. I'm your enemy. And therefore I fight against your devotees. But that demon could also then decide, okay, I'll become a devotee then. and then he gets the protection of Krishna. So in this way, he's not partial, because he reciprocates accordingly. It's like the traffic warden, he's not partial, or he's not partial to giving certain people exemptions and certain people tickets, unless you happen to know the person and it's a friend. But if there's a car parked on the line, he just gives the ticket, and if the car's parked legally, then he walks past it. So this is the rules of the game are set out, and according to which part we want to play, then the Lord will reciprocate with us. He's sitting there as a witness, and we decide, okay, I'm your enemy. Okay, let's be enemies. Right, that's what you want. Okay, this is the reactions you get for doing this and this. But actually, everybody's Krishna's devotee, and he's always just sitting in the heart of everyone, just waiting on them, patiently waiting on them, turning to him, and as soon as they do, he gives them all facility to come back to him. And similarly, if one surrenders, then regardless, just like we're reading this morning, that one cannot commit enough sinful activity that the holy name cannot counteract. This is showing the power of Krishna and the power of Krishna's holy name, that he is Ajita, he's unconquerable. It's not like, oh, this person has committed so many sinful activities that Krishna is too overburdened, so he can't accept you. Of course, in our Kali Yuga mentality, we think, oh, that's good. We can just chant Hare Krishna and then we can enjoy. Sometimes that mentality may be there. Eighth offense, committing sins on the strength of the holy name. But that Prabhupada says that's a very dangerous mentality. So we shouldn't use Krishna just like a doormat, but we should understand that Krishna's holy name is pure, and because of our association with Krishna, we're becoming purified. And don't forget that this is all by the mercy of Guru and Krishna. And don't forget where we came from, where we were heading, until we came across the association of devotees and the good fortune of the holy name. So the reactions of material modes of nature come according to our activities. Each individual person has their own specific reactions, and the Lord doesn't interfere with that. As we were saying, he sets up the rules of the game, and there would have been a point in time when we were all in knowledge, but we chose to ignore Krishna. In simple terms, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, you've come into this world saying, Lord, I won't forget you, but having forgotten this promise, you've remained in great ignorance. So this kind of says it all, that we did come from the Lord's association. We came from the Lord, and we've given up that service, thinking we'll enjoy for a little while and we'll come back. Don't worry, Krishna, I'll be back. He says, no, it's not what you think it is. It's an illusion. Yeah, I know, but I'll handle it for a little while. I'll enjoy for a little bit and then I'll come back. But having forgotten this promise, that I'll remember you, Krishna, don't worry. That we've forgotten, because this is the nature of the material world. It causes forgetfulness of Krishna. Even trying to be a devotee is hard in this material world, because it is more designed to make us forget Krishna. The temptations of Maya, our own conditioning, etc. The modes of material nature, we cannot fight against these modes. They're so powerful, so we're being influenced by them. But we make this decision that now I'm going to be a devotee. Now I'm going to try to be a devotee. Now I want to take association of devotees because I'm not strong enough on my own. I need the association of devotees. And therefore, gradually, then the shackles of the modes of material nature start to slacken. We change so many things, such as our diet. We get up early, we take a bath, we purify ourselves by obeisances to the spiritual master, tilak, obeisances to the deity, purifying the sense of sight, seeing the deity, the devotees, hearing the holy name, taking Krishna Prasad, Charanamrita. So all day long we're purifying ourselves. And in this way, then gradually, day by day, we are being released from the clutches of material energy. And Prabhupada says here that at different points of the day, the material modes are more prominent. The modes are always fighting for supremacy over the living entity. It's almost like some different birds of prey have swooped down on a carcass and they're fighting to, sometimes the vultures are there and then the jackals will come and then the lion may come. So they may be fighting over the remnants. So the modes of material nature like that, there's always some kind of, someone's pulling us and pushing us. But simply when the mercy of the spiritual master is there, when we get connected with the Supreme Lord, then these different modes who are holding the living entity hostage, then the living entity is rescued. Just like that example is given, as Andatamishra, Andakup, the deep dark well of material existence. We fall into the dark well and we cannot get out. There's no chance of getting out. So the only chance we have is if we keep shouting and hopefully someone will hear us. So maybe for many births we've been shouting, what's this world all about? How can I get out of here? How can I be extricated? Or at least in this lifetime we've inquired like this, and then Krishna has come along in some form or another and says, here, take this book, take this magazine, look at these people chanting. They're the guys to listen to. And we get attached to that group of devotees. We become connected with them. And therefore our journey out of this deep, dark material well has begun. The spiritual master throws down the rope in the form of the holy name, and he says, just grab onto that and I'll pull you, but you need to hold on. So every day we have to chant our rounds, every day we have to follow our vows, etc. And this is how we don't slip back down into the well again. Sometimes people, they struggle with being a devotee, and then finally they give up that struggle, but not giving up as in surrender. Okay, I've been struggling for some time, let me just surrender. Sometimes they give up in the negative way where they just give in to their mind. And it may seem that actually they're experiencing some relief because there's no longer that fight. But it's almost like they've kind of resigned themselves to the material energy in that sense. I once read part of a book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, I think it was called. So he was prisoner of war. He was a Jew and prisoner of war in a Nazi concentration camp. And he noticed that even though practically had nothing to eat, literally they were eating shoes, soup made of shoes and things, and just there was just something to put in the belly. And he says basically what was keeping them alive was the will to live. He says, and he noticed that as soon as someone gave up the will to live, they seemed to be more relaxed, but within a day they were practically gone. So we shouldn't be like that. Don't give up the spirit of reason, as Mangalananda says. Don't let the spirit of reason die. And don't let the doubts overtake us. These lower modes will cause so many doubts, etc. Doubts can be a springboard to higher understanding. So we should, when we have doubts, we should be praying to the deities, approaching the spiritual master, approaching other devotees who are more experienced, who are further along the path than ourselves, who have probably most likely already encountered similar doubts as well. So this is a great organization, this International Society for Krishna Consciousness, because there's always, whatever service you find yourself in or what predicament you're in, You always find someone who's been there before you, and they can give you good, solid Krishna conscious advice. And we just have to be faithful enough to put that into practice. So in this way, gradually the effects of these three modes of material nature will have practically no effect. As Lord Brahma says, that if one performs the devotional service, prescribed devotional service, the prescribed devotional service sometimes is difficult for people because they want to choose. But if you want to choose, then how do you know you're not just being a fair weather friend of Krishna? How do we know we're not just swerving, devotional service, serve and swerve? And whatever service we're in, there will always be some tests, there will always be some austerities. Sometimes people change from one service to another because of some difficulty. And then after a period of time, there's difficulty in that service, so they change to another service. After a period of time, they change that service or change location or whatever. But ultimately it comes to the point where they run out of options. And the option is, Krishna tells us very early in Bhagavad Gita that we have to learn to tolerate. When the difficulties are there, then this means we're getting an opportunity to become a devotee. Somehow or another we have to find some devotion. If it's all easy, then where's the requirement for devotion? Dedication. Dedication means that you stick with it regardless of the ups and downs. Just like many examples there in the Shastra, we see the Pandavas were put through so much difficulty, but they didn't give up. They didn't think, oh, this Krishna is too much. I've had enough of this. I'm going to the forest and staying there. No, they never gave up. And all these different examples there in the Shastra to show us also that Krishna glorifies his devotees sometimes by them being in difficulty, and certainly they had to get purified by that. And we learn to take shelter, because ultimately at the time of death, we don't want to be taking shelter in the modes of material nature. They will let us down because they will give us another body in the material world. But janma karma chime divyam evam yo vatitattvata tyagvadeha panajanma naitimamati sojana. So one who remembers, or who understands the janma and the karma, the birth and activities of the Supreme Lord as not being of this material world but as being transcendental, then they attain Krishna's eternal abode. Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam. Whatever we think of at the time of death, we will attain. And that is nobody else's concern, it's nobody else's influence, it's our choice completely. Whatever we think of throughout this life, it will culminate in what we think of at the time of death. So this whole life is a preparation for that final exam, and we don't know when that exam is coming. Unlike some courses, you know that you've got a certain period of time and then the exam's coming. Sometimes you think, well, okay, there's a few parties coming up, so let me just go and attend these parties. And then before the exam comes, I'll just get my head stuck into the books and I'll swat up day and night for that. Sometimes that happens with students, isn't it? They get caught up in the party mode. And then some of them forget that they're at university and they're supposed to be studying, and the time for exam comes and they've left it too late. Not enough time to study. And then they flunk out. But we don't have that luxury every day. You know, people, as they say, what's that verse? Is Ahanya Hani Bhutani Gachanti Hayamalayam? The most wonderful thing in the material world is that at every moment the souls are flocking to a house of death, but a foolish person thinks it won't happen to them, that they won't die. Even driving down the road, there's so many bugs getting splattered on the windscreen. When they got up that morning, they didn't know that was their destiny. We don't know what our destiny is when we get up in the morning. So therefore, it's the message of this is that it's important we don't take it for granted that we've still got 10, 20, 30, 40 years left, that we try to engage every day wholeheartedly in devotion and service so that we're absorbed in Krishna consciousness, and naturally, as thunder and lightning happen simultaneously, then immediately we just transfer to the spiritual world. So when does thunder and lightning happen simultaneously? When it's right on top of you. Yeah. And what's the formula? If you hear thunder and then the lightning comes 1 second later, how far away is the... Oh yeah, you see the flash first, that's right, because that travels quicker. So see, you see the flash of lightning, and then 1 second, 2 seconds later, you hear the thunder. That indicates how far away it is, isn't it? Is it 1 mile per second? Roughly, they say that. That's probably just for ease, for the layman's understanding. But when thunder and lightning happen at the same time, that means it's actually right on top of you. So when you see the flash of lightning, and then you hear the thunder coming sooner after the lightning, then you can tell that the storm's coming towards you. So as thunder and lightning happen simultaneously, then it means when one is Krishna conscious, then there's no period of time between giving up this body and getting your spiritual body. It just happens simultaneously. You're already engaging in devotional service with a spiritual body, which appears to be material, but we're using it 10% in Krishna's service, so it's considered spiritual, and that transference is immediate. So this is our goal, to achieve that, or to be engaging in that, not achieving as in like sometime down the road. We can start straight away by doing that. Okay, we'll just stop if there's anyone any questions, comments, or corrections, please. Krishna's partial to the demons. Well, this is the humility of the pure devotee, isn't it? He's thinking that even the demons are more fortunate than him. This is how the depth of his humility. But it also shows you Krishna's impartiality, because whether one is a demon dying at the hands of the Lord, or a devotee, then still they get Krishna's mercy. He's benedicting everyone. He's all auspicious. Wherever he is, even those who were whatever side they were fighting on in Kurukshetra, because they died in the presence of Krishna, they were all liberated. So that's in a... Mm. So we don't know what's going on, do we? But Rakshasa generally refers to someone who eats human flesh, isn't it? And it doesn't mean to say they have horns and tusks or fangs. And yeah, we see that. Sometimes so-called religious leaders, they're very fond of the blood of calves. One, I won't mention the name, but some so-called religious leader's favourite meal is veal, and veal is basically a young calf killed in a horrific way. So they don't understand what it means to actually be godly, because a godly person couldn't tolerate to see the suffering of a living entity for the gratification of their palate. But they don't know what is Prabhupada says that demons do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Doc Martens. And this is what devotees do when they join the movement. They've died. They've already started that process of dying. They've given up that life which they were pursuing. We all were going a certain trajectory, but Krishna consciousness came into our life and we left that behind. And our friends and our family, they were thinking, "Oh, you guys, you must be crazy. Why are you joining those shaven-headed guys in the bed sheets? Jumping about shouting, 'Hari, Hari.' What's that? Those guys have taken one too many trips." And so people think like that of them, or they think it's some kind of fanatical thing. Whatever they think, we've given up thinking that, because, like Prabhupada says, ISKCON is a movement of Paramahamsas. So if we're all performing devotional service as directed, then we're not on levels, lower levels. We're actually following the footsteps of Mahajana Gata Sapanta. We're following the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada, a great Acharya, and his faithful followers. And so we're already in the process of dying from the material world. First step is we just kind of disconnected ourselves, a satsanga tyag, and we have to remain on that path. That's the main thing, just to remain on that path. Well, this is Krishna's mercy, that if he sees that the devotee is becoming once again attached, then he may do something to prevent that. That's his Krishna's kindness. And it's difficult for us to appreciate that, but like Kadamba Kanamraj said, that sometimes you don't see God, but you see the hand of God, and quite often you don't see it until afterwards. You see, oh, Krishna's hand was in that there. And as we begin to see that, we think, okay, Krishna's hand may be in this as well. Let me be patient and just try to go along with what seems to be against my own will, but it seems to be providential. And remain enthusiastic at the same time. Try to remember that one. Patient and enthusiastic and confident. Okay, we better close there. ISKCON Govinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande.